Hello and welcome to the Noise of Three. This is Zach,
And I'm Dylan.
and
Oh no.
yeah, as you guys may have noticed, we're missing the third noise.
So it's the noise of we.
Yeah.
Goat's missing for this week. So sorry, the Overlord episode's gonna have to be postponed. But me and Zach prepared for this by watching a shit ton of space anime.
We love space anime. Well, I love space.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Dylan loves space.
No.
I'm really loud. That's fine. So it's only natural that we watch exorbitant amount of space anime.
Yeah, we actually have a lot in our catalog of things we could talk about. Because we have all the Gundam shows we watch too.
Yeah, and well, a lot of the space shows we watch are over 50 episodes.
Yeah, like this one, which is 99.
You want to tell them what we were talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about Space Brothers.
Space Brothers is...
It's a show.
Yeah, it's a show about these two brothers that just want to go to space together.
Yeah, so your main characters in this... would you place either one of the brothers above the other? Do you think, like, Muta's the main character?
It starts off with him. Like, the first episode starts off with him, so I will consider him the main character. The show is about him, but his brother's a big part of his
Right,
life, so
so-
it's a big part of the show.
You have Namba Muta, which is has recently been fired from his job for headbutting his boss.
Yeah, his boss was talking shit about his brother, so he just headbutted him.
Yeah, and his brother, Namba Hibito,
He's an astronaut.
he's an astronaut for JAXA that is working, which JAXA is the Japanese
It's like the
Aerospace Exploration Association or something like that.
Yeah, except exploration with an X.
Yeah. It's Japan's NASA, and they work very closely
'Cause-
with us.
Yeah, right now the whole thing is for them is they can't, like, JAXA doesn't have enough funding to have their own, like, shuttle program,
Right.
so they're using America's. And if I'm not mistaken, the show came out before our shuttle program was
2012.
terminated, wasn't it?
Yeah, this show came out in 2012.
When was the shuttle program terminated?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, we still shoot stuff up into space, just not people.
Yeah, but the main crux of this show is that they are trying to get a lunar colony going on the moon. And Hibito's on that mission.
Which is really cool.
Other than that, the show mainly just chronicles, I want to say realistic.
I think it's very realistic.
Well, I'm talking like realistic approach to how NASA and
yeah.
JAXA actually,
They worked really close with
Get-
with NASA to make this show, so
and how they actually get astronauts
Candidates.
into the, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I feel like the tests I don't think are real, or the trials they put them through. I feel like they're 50-50.
Yeah.
It's like that. There's an arc later on where they go like camping or something. Not really camping; it's more like surviving in the middle of a desert. I don't think they do that.
I would think they would do something very similar because of the,
I don't think they're
if
gonna.
you get stranded on re-entry.
Yeah, but I don't. I feel like they would have a little more controlled environment they do it in.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I feel like NASA wouldn't do that, but then again, looking at America and looking at if they're doing it in Texas, they would just throw them in the middle of somewhere and be like, survive.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. How do we want to go over this?
It's been a hot minute since we watched this show, so forgive us for getting any sequencing in this wrong, but we have a list of what we consider the main arcs of the show, and then we're just gonna quickly go over what happens in each one. And yes, this is going to be a full spoiler show because there's not really much to spoil.
You see the show, and like the first couple episodes, you pretty much get the premise of what's
Like-
going to happen, and you're like, okay, this is probably how it's going to end. There are a few things I think we should probably glaze over and not tell them.
Right, but I mean, like, the whole point of the show and most of the drama from the show comes is how's Muta gonna get through this application process, because
His brother applies them for Jax.
right, but it's Muta's the main character of the show. He's gonna become an astronaut.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll just roll right into
Man,
it.
it's weird not having a third person.
Yeah, there's a lot of dead air.
Sorry about that, guys.
These are gonna be awkward until we do more of them.
All right, so I guess we should start off with
So we have Muta's application in the JAXA candidate program.
And pretty much his mom spilled the beans to his brother that he lost his job. So his brother was like, oh, I'm going to apply you to JAXA. But he doesn't tell him. He just gets like something in the mail.
Well,
he gets an application packet in the mail.
Well, his mom fills it out for him.
His brother sent them the application thing. His mom filled it out, and they sent it in for him.
Yeah. And then he gets accepted to the preliminary exams.
Yeah. Which are supposed to be really smart and physically fit. Yeah. And it's funny because one of the guys that's there is like an old rocket engineer, and he's like in his 50s.
Yeah, he was almost 50, yeah. But that part of the show is pretty simplistic because it's mostly just Muta
doing physical tests or
right.
writing exams, and him going, "Whoa, I don't know if I can keep up with all these younger people." Because there's like
Muta's 35,
but there's like some like late 20s, early 20 people
fresh out of like a PhD program, pretty much.
Yeah, and they're just rocking these physical exams along with the knowledge tests.
Right, and it's also important to mention because Muta is a car designer.
Yeah, so he's not engineer. Stupid. He has, really good math background and whatnot. It's Japan. Even if that wasn't his degree, he'd already be better at math than us.
But this part of the show isn't really about like what's going on in the exams. It's more just like, okay, here's Muta, here's what his character's in like, and here's your supporting cast.
Yep, and it also shows they really set up that he really wants to catch up to where his brother is, because Muta is the older brother of him and Hibito.
And Hibito's like 3 or 4 years younger than him.
I believe so. And they both had the same dream when they were kids, which was to go to space.
Do you remember why?
Yep, because they wanted to go to space because they encountered a UFO one night.
Yeah, the show has a lot of cutbacks to when they were kids, and they were science-obsessed kids, so they walked around with recording equipment all the time. And one night when they were recording insect noises while catching cicadas, they saw a UFO and some aliens.
I mean, honestly, it was probably just swamp gas.
Reacting in the moonlight.
That was the one for what? In the Oki... No, not the Okefenokee, but where was that one? Was that in Florida?
Yeah.
All right. We can go on conspiracies in another episode.
So Muta obviously passes the written and physical exams because the show would end as soon as he fails.
Now, granted, it's worth to note that he didn't do the best.
Yeah, he just
barely made it,
scraping by every time. But I think that's where a lot of the drama comes from, because we were sitting here watching it, and we're always just like, why are we so invested in this? Why are we like getting so stressed out about this? We know he's gonna pass.
Yeah, because like we're on episode 20, and it's like, oh, he's not gonna make it. Like, well, where's the other 80 episodes gonna come from?
And I think that just speaks about how the show is written, because like it assumes that you know it's gonna happen, but it's written and set up in such a way that you're just like on the edge of your seat regardless.
Downloaded a whole couch, and I only needed 10% of it.
Yeah. Then after the written and physical exams, they go to a sealed room, which I believe it was 2 weeks, right?
I thought it was... I assumed it was like 3 weeks, or like a minimum of 3 weeks, or more than that.
It was an extended period of time. And so this is basically where you get the team. So you're introduced to... Serica.
Okay,
and,
so the way they split it up is they had what, 20? No.
They had 3 groups. They
had
of
12.
5.
I thought it was 4. Okay, no, it was 5. So they had 15 candidates, and they split them up into A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. And it's worth noting, all the characters you really get to know are in Group A. That's where Muta is.
There was one in B.
And there's one in B. A friend that he has, Kenji. Kenji wasn't.
It was in. Kenji was not in the room with Muta.
Yeah, Kenji was in B, and that's like best friend going into it. Like, Kenji's older too, and he basically hates his boring ass job he has in like some science lab somewhere. I don't remember.
He was a chemistry person.
Worked in like some chemical plant.
And so from that cabin, Kenji and literally who came from.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and apologize. We wanted some space music in the background, but everything for Space Brothers is either muted or deleted. So we're gonna fall back on our most favorite of videos.
Fair enough. I think that fits. This show's really relaxed. Like,
Oh,
we
yeah.
said we were on the edge of our seats, but it's a very light show.
You
Like,
just kind of sit down and chill out
just
and
watch
watch
it.
it. Now, granted, you're gonna want to pay attention because they go back to stuff routinely.
Right. But in Cabin A, which is where Muda is, you get pretty much the only two characters you really need to care about for the entirety of the show, which is Serica, which is Muda's main love interest in it.
She's best girl too because
There's
it's
no
like one. It's like
competition.
one.
There-
of
there's
two.
like him and her and Sharon, and literally who?
Jennifer, just
Yeah.
because we'll get to her later. She's a good character.
And then I forgot. Not Nita.
Nita and
yeah.
then the monkey guy.
They aren't important. They just bail like afterwards.
Well, yeah, because
But it's basically they say, all right, so this is going to be a simulation for what it would be like on a lunar colony, essentially.
Yep.
So you're locked in here. You have this amount of food. And
these are your activities you have to do every day.
yeah, you have a routines. You're going to go to
And
bed at this
then-
time. You wake up at this time.
Yeah, and then they go, "Hey, only 2 of you get to go from each cabin,
And you are going to pick them.
and you're gonna pick them at the end of the thing."
Mhm.
So I think cabin B devises
Cabin
a
B does
point, system.
and C is no one. So I don't think they really went into
They
C.
didn't really even say C. They did pick people from them,
Yeah.
and then A, they were just like, "We'll wait till the end."
Yeah, and then we'll decide then.
Yep.
But so it's basically just a team exercise. They want to see how they work in a crew. So NASA has a thing called green cards in it, and so
Supposedly from the show.
well, like I'm talking about in the context of the show.
Yeah.
But it's basically overflow toilet. Set an
So
alarm
what happens
off.
is they give a card to like the person whoever's supposed to, because like they'll routinely get stuff in through a little hatch. It's like instructions
Instructions.
and stuff, and I'll have a green card. And I'll have the person's name on it, and it's like you have to do this. Don't let anybody know you did it, and it's to cause strife. And one was flood the toilet. There was one for
setting an alarm off.
setting an alarm off at like the middle of the night, and then the clock in this is kind of unique because they only have the one. They have no other way to tell time.
Yeah, so the clock
And,
breaks, and then one of the things they have to do is
Like that was a green card. One of the guys was told to smash the shit out of the clock.
and then one of the things was what time is it?
Yeah, when they first, so they took a bus ride to get to the place where they locked them in.
That was
And
all shuttered down.
Like you can't see in the bus. There's like metal on the outside. You get in the bus, they drive. So they get in there, they drive, they get into the pods, and they cannot see the time of day it is because they shuffled them in and everything is dark. And then the first thing they do is go, "All right, guys, figure out the time."
Yeah.
Muta came up with this really slick and complex way to come up with the time. You want to know how he knowed what time it is? Watch the show and find out.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Okay. But that's pretty much it for that arc. It's just showing more like this is your main cast. Here's how they interact with each other. Moving forward.
That's basically where you make all your opinions about the characters.
Right. And then it cuts back to afterwards. Muda just basically said they go like, all right, Muda did more training. Then it cuts to Hibito actually.
Well, there's one thing we forgot about. There's a really long period in between where they left when they left the isolation
Waiting
chambers,
for results.
and waiting for
Yeah.
their results.
It special mentions to Namba doesn't or
Namba doesn't get the initial
Yeah.
nomination from his
it was
group,
Serica and
Nita.
yeah, and then
What
he
they
gets,
did is
it's a wild card.
yeah, there's a wild card. NASA's like, all right, obviously there's going to be more than 2 people from each group that we're going to really like, so we have one extra person that we're going to pick, or 2 depending on who it is. And it was what Kenji.
It was him and Kenji.
Him and Kenji were the wild cards because they're the best. Got that plot armor.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of downtime where you learn more about Hibito and how he handles everything. Shows how he's preparing for his moon trip, and then it just basically cuts to them Hibito going to the moon.
Yeah, his little brother goes to the moon.
Zach, I think this is your favorite arc
It was my favorite arc. I really liked the moon.
because it was the only time they spent time in space.
It was the only time they spent time in space. So when we started watching this show, we assumed that maybe half of it was going to take place in space. But out of 100 episodes, I would reckon
Like 20.
no.
No, like
No.
like Hibito was up in the moon for 20. He didn't focus on it, but he was up in the
He
moon.
was up in the
20.
moon for around 20, but if you had to put it in like actual like airtime, I would say maybe like 5 shows.
Yeah.
They just spread it across 20. Anyway, so they get to the moon and they have to like pretty much put together the moon capsule, like the little place they're staying at. And it's all going really well until Hibito
The
and
troubles.
one other guy are just driving around on the moon. And the problem with the moon is your depth perception's thrown off because
There's no landmarks.
there's no landmarks and everything looks the same. It's all just that shitty gray. And they drive off a cliff. And they fall down a ravine on the moon.
Yeah, like a very, very big chasm.
Yeah, really bad. They're dark side of the moon right now. But when they fall, guess what happens to one of the guy's suits?
Temperature regulator breaks.
Yup.
So they're in a spot where there's no sun, no atmosphere to keep the heat in. So this man is gonna die of hypothermia.
Oh, yeah.
Everything seems to go pretty well. Then the troubles arise again.
Yeah, so they're helping him. So Hibito isn't hurt. He's trying to get his... I can't remember the other guy's name. What was it? Daniel? Not Daniel.
No,
That's
it wasn't
pilot.
Daniel. It started with a D. It might have been Daryl.
Daniel. Anyway, so he's helping his fellow astronaut get out of there. And he's climbing up this thing and he falls. Hits his oxygen tank.
Yeah, it hits the main one.
His
They still
main-
have a reserve.
He has his reserve, but it's like... I don't know, maybe like an hour.
They said it was like 2 hours.
It's 2 hours, and help was like 4 hours away.
3.
3. Obviously not going to make it in
Yeah.
time. And then, like, around this time, it's cutting back and forth from moon to Earth. So let's talk about what's going on at the Earth at this point.
Yeah, so initially they don't tell Muda that his brother has suffered an accident on the moon.
And
But
he's trapped in a ravine.
yeah, but they eventually let him know, and then I don't know if this is real, but Japan has in this show has a satellite called Kaguya, and it's a 3D imaging satellite. So for this, they basically say, okay,
Pointed at the moon.
yeah, point at the moon. We can get Kaguya's photographs from it and use them to actually find the location of where they would possibly be. So NASA's plan is to send 2 astronauts on there, and it was Buddy and the other guy.
The black guy.
The black guy was Buddy.
Oh, the black guy's buddy?
yeah.
Then it was the chief, whatever his name is.
And then so they send them out in their like
Rover.
yeah, basically their big RV.
It's the
rover.
one where so the one the one Hibito and the other guy were in, it's like an open air type thing. They're wearing their
what you
spacesuits
think of
driving
in
it.
when you hear of a rover.
Yeah, when you think of rover, that's when you think of. The one they were in is like a big bubble looking thing. It's the one out of
Martian.
Martian. It's
Yeah.
the one out of Martian.
So they decide to send them to the crash site, when they last reached contact, because they said, they'll
They're gonna
probably
stay where they are.
stay where they are. But Japan says we need to send to the most
Like
logical
30
place.
minutes away
Right.
this way.
So their solution. Do you want to tell them the solution?
Well, yeah, he said Jax is like, we need to send them here because if they're hurt, they're gonna try to get out, and this is how they would get out.
Mhm.
So what
Because they have
did
the
is,
3D imaging.
Yep, they have the 3D imaging. So what they do is instead of sending like the big rover there, they send a little.
Basically, an oxygen tank.
It's an oxygen tank, but it pulls some. It pulls some chemical out of it. It pulls like water vapor and turns it into oxygen. Isn't that how it
Yeah.
worked? That's how they said it worked. They had multiples of these around the moon base, and that's how they got oxygen for the moon base. So they send one to where Hibito and the other guy are actually going. But what ends up happening is,
They're like a minute too slow.
yeah, they're not. Hibito saves the guy. He gets him warmed up, like he sets him in the sun and then pulls him back in the shade because he warms him up to keep him from dying and then pulls him back in the shade once his suit gets hot
Because he will
enough.
boil inside.
Yeah,
because
because he'll boil if he's not in the shade. And then he starts walking towards where he knows that people should be coming from because that's how they would get there. And he basically passes out. He has no
He
oxygen.
doesn't pass out. He starts suffocating on nothing.
Yeah, he starts suffocating. He can breathe. He's just suffocating.
Yeah, because it's
And,
just CO2.
And then he's like on his knees on all fours, and he's blurry on the cusp of death. And he looks up, And there's this little robot thing coming towards. Well, it's not a robot. It's like a
It's a UAV.
It's a UAV. Yeah, and it's wheeling towards him. He's like, "Oh, look at that!" And he gets up to it, and he somehow manages to get the oxygen hose hooked up to his suit,
Yeah.
and he doesn't die.
After this event, they get him back. The guy had ice crystals forming inside of his body, so he's all fucked.
Oh yeah, they show a picture of him. His arms and legs are just trashed.
Yeah, so he's all fucked, and then they decide to send Hibito and the other guy back to Earth.
But yeah, they have to wait roughly like a month or maybe a little. It was a little longer than a month. They had to wait for the guy with the really bad frostbite,
so they could actually get him in there.
Yeah, because right now he can't wear a spacesuit. He's all swelled up and just kind of chilling. I'm pretty sure if that situation was true, they would have had to cut his spacesuit off. It would just because I didn't see him getting out of it any other way.
Maybe.
Possibly.
Yeah. So after this, they decide to give Moomba Muda the wild card because of his, he basically came up with this plan to save Hibito. And so they decide to give him the wild card in conjunction with his performance in the closed room experiment.
Yep.
So
that's how he gets the wild card.
He gets accepted into NASA, but he's not in the astronaut program because there's a few more steps you need to take. The next arc is kind of Hibito.
They don't really touch on Hibito for a while.
Well, it's before Hibito comes back to Earth, but apparently every astronaut has to get a jet license.
Yep.
So the next arc's kind of.
So just to go ahead and tell you
your favorite character.
They hard cut from like
near death experiences.
Hibito leaving the moon to like just back to Muta. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to touch on that for like 30 episodes, which is about true.
It was more than that.
I feel like it was roughly 30. But anyway.
Because like he comes back and then...
So we come back... Yeah, we come back to the arc with the jet. And
Daniel Young.
We're leaving out a really big thing that happened before this, which is how Muta got really famous in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
So this happened before there were any really big accidents. And
this was
happened.
This is before the sealed room.
No.
Yeah?
It was.
This is during the preliminary exams. This is
before the second sealed room.
No. When he stops the crying?
Yeah.
No, that was before the sealed room.
Anyway, we don't know. We're not going to agree exactly where this goes on because it's been
like 3 months.
It's been like 3 months, and it's 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Well, it's like 98, 97.
I don't remember, dude.
Anyway, so they're eating lunch, and he's eating lunch with Hibito's neighbor because Hibito has a house in Houston, Texas, because NASA, and he's eating lunch with his neighbor, and he has his dog with him, Oppo, which is an adorable little pug. It's so ugly, it's cute. You can explain it. I'll let you go for it.
All right, so they're eating. You kind of hear
burgers.
about it on the radio and the news every once in a while, but there's a guy that's doing robberies in restaurants with a fire extinguisher, which is pretty smart when you think about it.
Just ruin that food.
Well, and so he comes in. He happens to just waltz it right in.
Speaking of food.
Oh my god, he waltz right into the diner where Ozzy's wife and the Muda are. And then,
that's his neighbor, by the way, is Ozzy.
Yeah. And then
not the Ozzy.
Muda and inadvertent Oppo walks away from Muda, and then during the robbery, so Muda tries to go save him, trips over Oppo and falls, headbutting the criminal, and stops him and gets him arrested.
Yep, but so when they ask everybody what happens, they're like, check out the CCT or CCTV, the closed circuit security cams, and all you see because of the fire extinguisher smoke is Muta get up and headbutt the crap out of the guy with the fire extinguisher. So you're like, oh, he got up and in the confusion headbutted this guy. So that's what everyone in Texas thinks. They're like, this Japanese guy
who's trying to apply to be an astronaut for NASA.
Yeah, who's trying to apply to be an astronaut for NASA.
Who is the brother of the first Japanese man to go to the moon.
Yep. Just took out this serial robber.
Yeah.
Is robber?
Robber.
Yeah. Yeah, just took out the serial robber. So that's because he was already part of Jax at that point.
No.
Yes, he was.
Whatever.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. You don't need to know the order any of this happens.
Yeah.
That was me.
Okay. I thought it was the ghost in the ghost house.
Today in the ghost house. We'll give them a shout out too.
Yeah. So the Jet arc happens now. When the main character, or like the main supporting character in this is it's an old jet pilot named Daniel Young.
What's going on here is when they're doing right before they're doing the jet. This is when they're actually he's been accepted into NASA as an astronaut pending he makes it through the course.
Yeah.
So he's been like taking all these tests and whatnot and working on all this stuff, but he's been really distracted because
of Sharon.
Because of Sharon.
Now who's Sharon, Zach?
So Sharon is this lady that Muta and Hibito know. They call her Aunt Sharon, but there's no relation. And she owns an observatory in Japan, which they would visit a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's fair to say that's how they really got into space.
Yeah.
She also taught them a lot of stuff, which I'm just going to go ahead and attribute to why they're so freaking smart. So Sharon has come down with...
Lou Gehrig's disease.
Yeah. So, she's dead, guys. Not really, but she's not doing good. She has the degenerative...
Nerve system
nerve disease, which, dude, they ain't coming back from that.
Nope.
For anybody that doesn't know what this is, it's the same thing Stephen Hawking has.
Yeah.
So, it basically takes away your ability to do anything you want to do.
It takes away all of your motor skills.
Yep. So, she's dealing with this, although, she's able to walk and ride at this point, but Muta's super distracted, and he does really bad on these tests. So, and the way NASA works is like, if you perform the best, you get first choice at pretty much whatever. And in this case, it was pilots to teach you instructors to teach you how to fly the jet. So everybody is like, oh, who's the best guy? It's probably, don't they ask them or something? Or NASA tells them.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so, all the people that did really well get this one pilot and so on and so forth down the line. So there's this guy that has no students. And Muta's like, oh man, this is the guy Muta gets stuck with. His name is Daniel Young, except they say Daniel.
Yeah.
It's Daniel Young. And he's just this old guy that flies the shit out of planes.
And his wheelchair.
Oh, yeah, he has a wheelchair that he just drives around super fast.
The reasoning is, my dad and grandpa had bad legs, so, I'm just preparing for the future.
He always has to go fast. It's like he's a initial D enthusiast or something. Running in the 90s.
So this whole arc is basically Daniel trying to get Muta's spirits back up and,
And the other thing is, he's having a hard time multitasking in the plane, because when you get in a plane, it's not... It's like a car in the fact that you have to do multiple things at once, but it's not, because you're flying a freaking plane and you could just drop out of the sky and die. So he can't focus, so he's not doing very well.
Yeah.
And eventually Daniel gets through to him and is like, hey. And he becomes like the best pilot.
Yeah.
Like, there's a scene where there are these two planes flying really close together, and Daniel's like, hey Muta, shoot the gap. And he turns his plane sideways and just slides on through. So yeah, now Muta is a boss-ass pilot. He's virtually an astronaut. Well, after that, he pretty much is.
Yeah, afterwards, they basically just be like, all right, we're going into your... they do the competition.
Yeah, so they do, like, the last bit of training.
Is survival training, and then a...
rover competition.
Yeah, an unmanned rover competition.
Which is, they have, like, a little rockets that they shoot up. I say little, but they're, we're talking, like, 4 feet long.
Yeah.
Like, hobby enthusiast rockets. They shoot up in the air. And it has to carry the rover, so it can't weigh too much. There is a specific weight limit, and there's a size constraint. And then it comes down, has to land, and then it has to be able to go from point A to point B completely unmanned. And
with no input.
With no input. It's supposed to sit down, touch down, and go. And whoever makes it the fastest time wins. And in the event, that no one makes it, it's whoever gets closest.
No, it wasn't. It was fastest time and closest.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, like, whoever gets to the point. Like, if you don't make it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, I guess we'll cut back to the survival. bit.
Yeah, because I mean, both of these kind of bleed together. Cause,
Yeah,
like,
they do bleed together. There's
not
also the
all
thing
that
we
important.
forgot to mention so when he's going through all these training things, arcs, I guess, courses.
Yeah.
It's not just the people from Japan that he's training with. There's also the like Americans. I'm
There's
pretty
an
sure
Indian
there's an Indian woman. There's I'm pretty sure there's like a Russian. Anyway, basically, it's the training. Like it's like the international training pool.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to space travel, where
NASA's got it on lock.
NASA is very much they work together with countries that normally wouldn't work with. So it's this whole group of people that's just very pretty diverse, and it's really diverse with how they act too. Like there's two like American people that are like like retired military, well not retired military, but like just out of the military. They were pilots or something in the military.
Something.
They
They don't really go into it. They just say they were in the military.
They were in the military, so they're hard asses, and they don't like Namba and the Japanese people because they're like,
They're all a little goofy.
yeah, they're like, oh look at these people, they're not taking this seriously. They need to get off their high horse. So these are the people they're competing with, and the survival thing we forgot to mention.
About the teacher?
It's a race too.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're running, like they have to go from point A to point B, and they have so much time to do it.
They have 3 days.
They have 3 days. I do not remember the distance. It was several.
It was like 50 kilometers or something.
Yeah, something I couldn't do because the furthest distance I go is from like my computer chair to the fridge. I don't know where I was going with that. With the thing before that.
There's also their teacher, which
Namba knows the teacher.
No, I'm talking about the guy who's obsessed with time.
Oh no, I was talking about Rory.
Oh yeah, I was talking about like the teacher for this whole section of
the guy
training.
in charge of the training.
Yeah.
His whole thing is he's obsessed with time and don't waste his time. You always got to be punctual and do stuff quickly.
Mm-hmm. I didn't like him.
No,
I thought
he's
dragged.
He's
on.
an ass.
Like
Like,
his inclusion's weird.
his character is an ass, and it's like he ends up like not hating Muta. He ends up liking him. It's just the way he acts. I don't like the way his character's written.
Yeah, it does. I don't think it adds anything to
They
it really.
They could have made him better if they made him more like military style. More like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like he was just being mean to be mean. But if he was like a hard ass because he's in the military, it would have been a little more understandable. He's dealing with this guy that used to work in like the auto industry from Japan. What is he? Why is he here? If they did, more along that lines, I think it would have been better. Not saying it's bad.
Yeah. So after these two competitions, they get their placements. So I forget where Nita gets put.
This happened before the jet. Because this is how they got their placements to pick the instructors.
No.
Because the
placements were
that's right, it was that test.
The written test.
And I said that too.
Yeah.
I'm losing it.
So after this, they get their placements. I forget where Nita gets put.
He's not bottom.
Yeah.
But he's in the bottom.
Sarika gets put onto the last mission to the ISS.
Oh, this is where they get their assignments.
Yes.
All right. This is when he gets.
Is Nita on a retainer for the lunar mission?
He is. Nita gets put as a backup. He's one of the other Japanese guy. Nita and Kenji both get put on backup for the moon.
Mm-hmm. And then Namba gets put in the engineering department to design a new rover.
Because they had a problem with the rover just
careening
going over a cliff.
Yeah.
And since he was an automaker, it's there's a reason why he was put there, but he doesn't see it like that. He sees it as like, I want to go to the moon. You put me here. What the hell?
Right. I think you should explain the majority of this arc because I think you had fun with it.
I had fun with every part of the arc. Or is it just because car?
Yeah.
All right. So Muta gets the idea on how to fix the rover from one of his previous cars. But before I go into that, they described the in-house NASA engineers as a bit. They're engineers. They're not car designers. They're like PhD. They don't need to be designing a freaking car.
Yeah.
So basically, they're sitting there and they're looking at everything from a technical standpoint, going, "How do we make it heavier so it doesn't bounce around?
What was
do we
it?
make
It was
the
like
brakes
for
bigger?"
like every kilogram, it costs like $500,000 to send it up into space.
I thought it was every 100 kilograms.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it was like every 100 kilograms. It cost an exorbitant amount of money. So, and then things weigh like what 1/6 the weight
Right.
on the moon.
So
So like,
brakes.
if we want to make it stop better, we'd have to put an additional 500 pounds. But that's not actually 500 pounds. It has to be 6 times that on the moon, and that would take so much money to spend. So basically, NASA's like,
We can't fix it.
NASA's like, make it stop better. Don't add any weight. So
Yeah.
they're like, well, you can't add bigger weights because there's no, like, the friction coefficient. It's not there. So Muta goes, it's not the braking that's the problem. It's the fact that you can't see where you're going. So he takes a design aspect from one of his old cars that he designed. This car actually got rejected by his previous boss. It was a flying car.
Right, and they
However,
only kept one part of
They
it.
kept one part of it, which was like a hollow windshield. What I mean by like the HoloLens from
Mhm.
Windows, it projects a little thing up there so it tells you where you're going. But
Just
they're
hooks up a GPS and
just
puts
hooks
it.
up a GPS and go. And like their only complaint when they presented this to NASA is they're like, well, how are we gonna make the map? And boom, in come Jax, and
Yeah,
he's
we
like,
got Kaguya.
we've already done it. Well, not really. They're like, you're gonna have to pay us, but or they would want money. But anyway, so he didn't make the windshield by himself. He called his
Right,
former
Because he didn't have access to the
he didn't
designs.
have access to the patent that he filed, or that they filed it, not him. So he calls up the place he used to work at, and his boss is such a kiss ass because he wants his brother's signature.
Yeah, and
So he basically is like, oh, all is forgiven. Your brother's not an asshole, what did he call him? He called him like a liar or a cheat, something along that lines. He was being dishonorable. That's what he was being. I gotta stop saying It's one of those days here.
yeah. Afterwards, they pretty much implement this, and they're just like it would add
Done.
no weight to
Oh.
it essentially.
And previously, before they presented the idea, he goes up to not the commissioner, but
The chief.
the chief that runs NASA. He goes, if I can nail this, you're going to give me a spot on the moon. And he goes, you know what? Yeah. Because he doesn't think he can do it. Because if NASA engineers can't do it, what's this guy from Japan going to do? And he hit a
And he
home
just
run.
nails it.
Yeah, he just took it and bent it over the desk.
So after this, he gets put on retainer for the backup crew of the next lunar mission, and then we entered to like basically the second half of the show, for the most part.
Which is Muta's moon training.
Is Muta's moon trading,
And
but more importantly,
it cuts back to Hibito.
mostly Hibito.
Take it away.
Hibito has a specific kind of PTSD now, because that's not a great thing to happen. Suffocating inside of a spacesuit. So he
Dude.
basically has panic attacks as soon as he puts into a spacesuit, or as soon as he gets put into a spacesuit.
Yeah, he puts the helmet on and he's, blacking out, heart rate, heart bursts.
Exasperated breathing,
Yeah, there you
sweating, everything. Falls to his knees. So unless Hibito can get better, he cannot be an astronaut, which is like the main crux of this last
And
part of the show.
they don't tell, NASA doesn't tell anybody. What
on
they do
Hibito,
is,
like he doesn't even. They tell him like, don't inform my family.
yeah, Hibito's like, don't tell anybody.
And so in the meantime, they put him on the safety commission.
No. That happens after Russia. So what they do is they send Hibito to Russia to try to rehabilitate, and then after, I think it's like a month or so, they're like,
Right.
all right, he's not making any press.
So
he's not
so
making
they
any...
in NASA were trying to cure him of his PTSD using various means. And then they say, you know what? None of this shit's working. You know who handles people really well in breaking them down? Russia.
So they send him to Russia, and they don't. All right, we got to talk about. So he makes a friend in Russia, which is one of the.
Friend.
Well, no. I'm not talking about her.
Oh.
I'm getting to that. I'm talking about her father. So he makes a friend in Russia with one of the astronauts. It's basically the guy that NASA was like, you have to watch Hibito. I cannot remember his name. It was some Russian name. And there, he's like one. He was one of his
I
family.
think it might have been Yuri.
Yuri. Yeah. Anyway, his family is like a family of astronauts. So, you know, my father was an astronaut, so I'm an astronaut type of deal. So he's really well known. He's in charge of Hibito. So then they cut to his house, and this dude's daughter walks in. She's like a 10, and then they get to her age, and she's like 15. And I'm just like, that's not a 15-year-old. They did not draw a 15-year-old.
They did not. Like, they gave her like thick lips. She's the same. She's like just a few inches shy of Hibito's height.
Yeah, put her in heels, and she's his height.
Yeah, because me and Zach were sitting there, and we would just go, "Ooh, that's spicy spaghetti right there."
Yeah, and then and then her dad cuts in and goes, "Why is a 15-year-old drinking juice out of a wine glass?"
Trying to look hot.
And she's like, "Nah, I'm 16," and blah 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 blah. Drama ensues. But so she crushes on Hibito hard because they don't.
Oh yeah. So they made a TV show based off of Hibito called
Hibbit.
Yeah, and he's a little rabbit. And so they basically took all the initial lunar colony crew and then made them into animals.
And the reason this was so important is because Hibito was the first Japanese person on the moon.
Yeah, so
and
he had his Neil Armstrong moment.
If you guys are listening to this, obviously you've watched some sort of anime probably. Oh god. Dylan, what are you doing? So you've watched probably some sort of anime, and you know Japan will make an anime about anything. So that's effectively what they do. They make an anime about Hibito.
Yeah, and the reason why he's a rabbit is because when he got onto the moon, you know, they were like, hey, you got to say something, you know, when you first step up on the moon, because, you know, it's very historical. So he just goes out there, jumps in the air with his fist in the air, and just yells, yay.
And they make the whole crew animals. The only black guy
is a gorilla.
The gorilla. And
Ooh,
talking
look at that dead hair.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Talking about making the black guy gorilla, they messed up some like Southern culture, kind of.
Oh yeah.
So they're having a party, and the music, you see a guy with a guitar, and then this is what
Making
you
a
hear.
fiddle noise.
This is what you hear. You hear a banjo and a fiddle, and the only person at this party that's playing music has a classical acoustic guitar, and I'm just like, why is it making these noises? And I don't know if they just inserted like an audio clip, like, we need a person with an instrument, get someone in there, and they're like, yeah, Texas people play guitars. But sorry, that like it didn't just happen once.
Oh no, it happened like at least 3 times.
So, you know, that's something to look for. That's in the latter half of the show. But anyway, back to Russia.
Yeah,
and Hibbit.
So basically this girl's obsessed with the cartoon, and then she's like, oh god, he's in my house.
Yeah.
And so she's obviously crushing on him real hard. And so she is a very, would you say renowned ballerina?
Yeah, renowned and super talented. Because I mean, just look at her. Ugh. Except you guys can't do that because
15. Oh, shit. What up? Just stripping wires over there?
No, this is a pipette for paint.
Oh.
I don't know what just happened to it.
So after that happens, he kind of learns this girl.
He learns the girl's story.
Right, and so her story essentially boils down to
she was doing ballet.
Her parents forced her to do ballet.
Well, yeah, because her mom owned a ballet studio. So
it's Russia.
You know, she was just right into ballet. Now it's worth noting. Oh God, saying that too much. Well, her mom is like stereotypical Russian woman, built like an ox, and you know, as wide as a door.
Mm-hmm.
So she's doing ballet, and then all of a sudden she messes up, and snap goes her ankles, or 1 or 2, I don't remember. Anyway, so after she breaks her legs, she's
like, nah, fuck this.
Yeah, screw ballet. I'm done. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm blah. And then when her dad was in space, because her dad was on the International Space Station, he sent her a message, and it made her really excited, and she did like a ballet move, and it was like, boom, I'm ready.
Yeah, and so Hibito kind of takes a lot of this, basically,
because
metaphor.
they're showing Hibito videos, like child home videos type things, and it starts out with her being really bad at ballet and not wanting to do it, and then when she finally gets good, she breaks her ankle, and
Right.
she's not able to do it
And
anymore.
then
And then
he-
she gives up on it.
Then he watches her perform live.
Yeah, and he was just like, "Oh my god, she's so good."
And it's also worth mentioning how the Russian guy is trying to get him back up to speed for it.
Oh yeah, he just keeps having him drink booze.
No. I'm talking about, like, okay.
The different outfits.
Right. And so the test that NASA was doing was that you
Walk 10 meters in
walk
a
10 meters
suit.
in a spacesuit, and then you do underwater
Yeah.
to simulate zero G. So he says, all right, put on this baseball cap. Walk 10 meters. Okay?
All right, we know you can walk 10 meters with a baseball cap on. Cross that one off the list.
Yeah, and then it's just keep on going until you get to spacesuit.
Yeah, they keep on doing more restrictive clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the ballet scene when Hibito goes and watches ballet. We're gonna roll it back a second here. The animation for it was amazing. They put
Yeah.
a lot of time into watching ballet and seeing how their bodies move to make this scene.
Yeah, because if you really think about it, it's a lot of the animation in this show is not great, but it's fine because it's not a very
There's no
dynamic
ice
show.
skating, so no big deal.
Yeah, and it also is over 90 episodes.
Yeah, there are some funny. Like you can
Background
get some funny
characters.
screenshots
Yeah.
and background characters where it's like, did they even draw this person? Who let their kid draw this person?
This
'Cause
person doesn't have a face.
This person doesn't have a face. This person doesn't have a mouth. This person's whole face is eyes.
Mhm.
Or, this person's eyes are just black, soulless holes. So that's something to definitely look out for if you watch this show. It gets really good.
Yeah. Then at this point, there's only like 15 episodes left.
Yeah, it starts wrapping up real quick towards the
Do
end.
you want to describe the comments you were making during this whole thing?
So I'm just sitting there this whole thing, and I'm just like, we're watching this, and I'll just be like, all right, hard cut to Sharon dying, or
No.
just hard cut to Sharon she had ALS.
ALS, yeah.
She had
which is Lou
ALS.
Gehrig's disease.
Shit, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't remember the acronym.
Mhm.
All right, so she had ALS, and I'm just like, every time we get somewhere, they'll do like some happy scenes, and I'm just like, it's gonna hard cut to Sharon not being able to move anymore. And the worst part is, it did it about twice.
Yeah. It just shows her getting worse because at the time,
She's trying to lobby for a moon telescope.
right, so they could point it further into space.
Yeah, and since it's on the moon, it can be way bigger than a satellite.
And it doesn't get interference from the atmosphere.
Well, yeah, as opposed to inside one, because we have satellites outside,
Mhm.
really far out of our atmosphere, so we don't really get that interference. But there's nothing as big as a satellite you can have on Earth in space.
Mhm. So basically, what happens at this point is Muda is trying to get onto the moon so he can start this telescope project for Sharon before she dies, so she can see her project come to fruition before she passes away.
Yeah, because once you get ALS, you got
Yeah, maybe 2 years, unless you're Stephen Hawking's.
it depends, but like as soon as like your motor functions start to go, that's the clock.
Yeah.
Listen to that nice music.
The next part of this is since Muda is on the moon,
Hibito.
No.
Muda's not on the moon.
Muda's on the moon crew now.
Oh yeah, he's on the moon crew. He's not a backup. He's on the moon crew.
Yes, because they just rocketed him and Kenji to the front.
Yep.
Well, they rocketed Muda and Kenji to the next selection process, which
Yes.
is a underwater.
Apparently, that's all NASA is just going, who do we want to send? Let's not make a decision. Let's just sit on our asses and sit here
Yeah.
and shuffle stuff around.
Their next set of training is to go to an underwater base, which is
really
about
cool.
the size of, say, like 2 RVs.
Yeah, take 2 Winnebagos and slap them together, and that's the
Yeah.
size of the place. They're in there with 4 dudes. Or is it 5? It is 5.
Because
it's 4 and then
it was 5. There was the 2 veterans, the 2 rookies, and then the trainer.
Yep. So basically what they're doing is they're down there and they're by themselves
They're
in like
basically
a
doing
closed off
EVA.
situation.
They're doing EVA training.
They're doing EVA training. What they're doing specifically is they have to design and build a mock or
Moon
scale,
base.
not a moon base, but like they either have to say how they would modify the current moon
No.
base or build their own.
No, it's build a moon base,
No.
but add a modification to it.
No, build the moon base.
Yeah.
And then, well, because they did give them the option to rebuild it.
Mhm.
And basically what happens is Namba has some ideas, but Kenji's like, no.
So they come down there, they're all buddy, and then they say, only one of you gets to go.
Yep. So it just... Namba and Kenji are just
at this
not at each other's throats, but they're visibly bumping heads.
Right, because at this point it's just, okay,
I have to get
we
to the
can't
moon.
be friends anymore. We're trying to both go to the moon.
Yeah, so Kenji, is like outperforming Muta until Muta has a good idea, doesn't tell anybody about it except the one guy he needs help from, Andy, which is this really tall, huge guy. He's basically Andy the Giant, and he's super strong too. So there's that. He gets him to help him, and they have a little like underwater rover, and he makes a little rack for it so they can transport supplies. And why this is important, because where they have to build like the moon base in a designated area, and it's a pretty far place from their little underwater home. The way they describe it is they said it took them about 2 hours to transport supplies. I don't know how hard it is to walk underwater. It's gonna be hard, but walking 2 hours underwater just to get supplies. So basically what they do is they have the little rover underwater, which I guess they ride in or something.
Yeah.
They walk beside. They modify it to where they can put their resources on it and move them with the rover. So now they don't have to worry about transporting stuff. So
They just did it all.
So Muta's
once.
like, all right, now my idea comes in. Because they scrapped his idea initially because they wouldn't have enough
Which
time.
is the lunar telescope.
Which was the telescope. Which he ended up not doing anyway.
Yeah, the only other thing, so what sets Namba up there is they have to submit a modification, and then everyone has to agree on it. So his modification was mirrors on top of it, so they could use less electricity to still get light. Because
but there was some sort of like special thing he had in there to like filter out the cancer rays from the sun because it's the moon and there's no atmosphere.
Right, but he designed a thing in such a way that it could use mirrors to reflect the non-radiation sunlight into there. They could
Into the moon base.
Yeah,
There's
I
the
don't
moon
know
base.
how many hours of sunlight the moon actually gets.
Neither do I, but anyway, it was a way to have some sunlight, and it wasn't just save electricity, but it's also helped to raise spirits, because when they're doing these simulations, the only light they have is like those stupid 4-foot long fluorescent bulbs that are just terrible. I remember them from school. That's like PTSD right there for me. Walk into a school building and you see like the little flicker,
You
and
hear
it's
the
just
humming.
God, it's the worst.
So they decide to send Muta to the moon because they said he is the one that is most thinking about what it's like to be on the moon.
Well, they don't, out of their people, but they still have to go through the selection process. Like everybody, they have a party after this, and everybody like is sharing their ideas, and you see that the other groups that made their moon bases, because there was three underwater trials that get like group A, B, and C type of deal. There was that again, and Namba's in theirs was just head over heels above everyone else's. Everybody else's was like super bare bones. They didn't have enough time to make anything. Theirs was trash. Versus Namba's, which was like fully upscaled, built up, and A tier, just doing really good.
So the last part of the show is Muta getting Capcom training, which Capcom is their central command. Like, in the movies where they're sending the rocket into space.
It's Houston.
Yeah, and they have all the desks and everything, all the computers, that's Capcom. So with this, it's just him saying, like, here's what you say to these people. Here's, how you handle situations. Here's the commands for everyone. Here's how you, here's how you look at everything.
They have to be trained in this to go to the moon. Because I guess to be a full-fledged astronaut, you have to be cross-trained in everything. So if anything goes wrong, you can do it. With the exception of like the specialists, because interesting fact, Hibito was the only person that went up to the moon in their trip that could manually fly the shuttle. That's why he was important.
Yeah.
Because he did the training to manually fly. Like if the computers go out, he's the guy. But the odds of that are, I mean, they're probably not low, but I don't think they're high.
So at this point in the show, Muda has found out about Hibito's PTSD, and
So again, he's really distracted.
right. But with this, Muda has to deal with this going on, trying to get onto the moon, and Hibito just drops the mic. I'm out. I'm not an astronaut anymore, and just quits. So Muda's just like,
You can't.
what?
Yeah. And that's
Basically how the show ends. Because there's one episode where there's a time skip, and it shows Muda sending the ISS with the ISS
the
mission
International Space Space Station.
sending that mission up, and then he's in Capcom doing it. Like, he's actually commanding them.
Dylan and I have forgotten a very important fact about including Sharon, the lady with ALS, and Muta's honey, which is Sayaka? Sarika. She's obviously she's best cool, but Muta has a super crush on her. She wants to go to the space station very badly, and the reason is her father had ALS, and he died, and wasn't he a doctor?
Yes.
Anyway, Sarika. I had it right that time. She's a doctor too, so what she wants to do, or scientist at the very least, she wants to go to the International Space Station before it's shut down, because at this point it's 2025 and the International Space Station is reaching its end usable life. So it's almost done. I think they have 5 more years. Anyway, she wants to get up there so she can do ALS research, because there's a medical pod where you can only do specific research in zero gravity. And she's like, I have an idea for a cure, but I can only do it in zero gravity. And she's the only person that can do it, because don't share your work with other people. That's how you lose credit. Yeah, other than that, we covered...
the show hard cuts to the end.
It's just boop, done, and you're like, wait, what? That's it?
And it's just... Hibito... it's implied that he just, didn't want to be with NASA anymore and just works with JAXA.
Went back to JAX because they're starting their own shuttle program.
Yeah.
So he goes back to strictly work with them. They don't say that, but it's heavily implied, so... I'm going to assume that's where he went.
Yeah, and presumably Muda makes it to the moon at some point.
Yeah.
That's the show. That's Space Brothers.
Is there anything else we're forgetting?
I think that's the only major stuff.
What was your favorite part?
I honestly like the underwater part.
You like the underwater? I really liked the jet part. I think that was my favorite, just because I like the way Daniel acts. His character was written very well.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of Genki. if he drove fast.
Yeah.
His character design, how about that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, this show's just good. It's just a lot to watch. And for a lot of people, I can see this getting quite boring for a lot of people, actually.
If you have someone to watch it with someone.
Yeah, because the reason why I started watching it, because I had always known about the show since it came out, and then I started downloading it. I got to episode 20, and I just went, because I hadn't watched any of it at that point, and said, this shit's still going? Alright, I'm just going to watch this later. And then
2 years later,
we started watching space anime together, and I was like, hey, there's a show I've been meaning to watch called Space Brothers. It's 90 episodes.
We watched this show after a show called Plantes.
Yeah.
And
which is the most hardcore space anime ever.
This one's hardcore too. They don't, the physics are pretty.
Mm-hmm.
The physics are there. But
I'm talking about space.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, that's our summary. If you want to call that rambling a summary.
This is just the whole thing. We just wanted to do it all. Because we covered a general outline of what happens.
But there's so much we're leaving out.
Really, the only spoiler is that Hibito gets PTSD. That's about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just kind of okay, next part. And then we left out a lot of fine details, because obviously you should watch the show.
If we were to go into detail, we could do
multiple episodes. It would be an episode an arc.
It'd be less than that.
Yeah.
No, more than that. Sorry, more than that. We could do we could do less than an arc an episode.
Yeah.
Especially when you get into the underwater ones.
Oh.
What were you saying,
Drill?
Oh, okay.
It's also really good to mention the the openings are all fantastic in this show.
Yeah, there's 9 or 8 openings.
I think it's 9.
I think it's 9. Yeah, someone came in here and was asking for a little drill that I have on the podcast table.
Look at all that dead air.
Yeah. We're not editing this either.
No,
We're just going to let it go.
it's space theming.
Space theming. You guys can expect more space-themed anime
Yeah,
from us.
because me and Zach actually watched quite a lot of space anime before we even came up with the podcast, so Goat hasn't seen it. Seen a lot of
Yep.
stuff we're talking about.
All right, and
So it's just-
like and subscribe and do whatever this is on. You know, we like feedback,
yeah.
even though we don't get any. That's okay, guys.
Well, we get it in person from a lot of people.
We get it in person. That's important.
But yes, definitely watch this show. Get a friend or two together to watch it, though.
Or just put it on times 2 speed.
Yeah.
Get good at reading subtitles.
Get good at reading subtitles. Learn how to skip recaps.
Oh yeah, once it cuts back to like their childhood, watch like the first 3 minutes. You'll know everything you need to know. Skip to the end of
I'm
it.
talking about like the individual episode.
Oh,
recaps.
there was a whole episode.
No, there were 3 episodes.
There were
of
3
just
episodes
entire
of just
recap.
recap, which I think is pretty good for a 100 episode. It's not like Naruto where there's Naruto
that
has a whole
happened-
season of recap.
That
man.
happened after a year of airing.
Yes, after a year of airing. So I guess that sums it up for Space Brothers.
Yep. That's about it.
I'm Zach.
I'm Dylan, and this is the noise of space.
This is the noise of Wii Space.
Yeah, space. Oh, that's good.
Wii Space.
Yeah,
I'm Zach,
I'm Dylan.
and this is the noise of Wii Space.